name is Dr. Philip Olale from the University of Nairobi, Department of Urban and Regional Planning. We are going to cover a topic in Chapter 5, which looks at urban laws to accelerate digital transformation of cities and territories. Engaging in that conversation, we are going to organize our discussion in about 4 to 5 areas. We are going to cover an introduction which looks at definitions. We are going to cover aspects of the utility of urban laws, some basic statistics, the content of urban laws, the categories of the laws, and even some element of justification of those particular laws. We are then going to look at specifically what are the roles of urban laws towards digital transformation within our cities and our urban areas. We look at some challenges and then conclusion. So we'll begin with an introduction, and at the introduction level, we first want to know what urban laws are. So in this conversation, there are two elements that we need to consider when we are looking at the concept of urban law. But before we do that, we look at the definition of urban laws to include all relevant policies, laws, statutes, these are acts of parliament, and other subsidiary legislations such as bylaws, handbooks, guidelines, standards that have been enacted by a government or that have been enacted by a state to regulate or to manage urban areas, to manage various aspects within the urban areas. And we shall be seeing some examples of the various themes or the various areas within an urban setup that are managed by urban laws. But the critical point here is that all relevant laws and legislations, bylaws that have been created by a government entity or a state agency that has the powers to create laws, as long as those laws relate to regulation of activities or management or various aspects of urban areas, then we consider that as a body of urban laws. And later on, we'll be seeing some examples. So urban laws do three things. They provide the authority, meaning they clarify who has the authority to engage in the management of certain aspects. So if it is, for example, provision of services like infrastructure, water, who has that authority? Urban laws will be able to give that authority. Who has the authority to govern a particular area? Who therefore has the decision-making powers? So you have the authority, but also does the law clarify the decision-making responsibilities for that particular entity or that particular aspect, urban management? And lastly, urban laws also clarify on the aspects of accountability. Who is accountable? So you have authority, you have decision-making. So those are the various aspects of urban laws that are provided for to ensure that there is clear management of various aspects of urban governance. So we'd want now to move to the next area of conversation, which is the utility of urban laws for digital transformation. If we look at some basic statistics, we find that, and specifically we are focusing on African countries. The statistics that we are able to see there demonstrate that the digital world has really, taken shape within our urban areas. You now have a majority of urban dwellers with access to phones, with access to internet, and with access to various aspects of the digital world. So what does this mean for urban managers? I think that is the fundamental question that we need to ask ourselves. What does these statistics mean to urban managers? What that means is urban managers must also transform, because laws basically are made as a social contract between the governed and the governor, or the person who governs. So if that social contract is there, it means that both of these two entities need to have a very easy way of communication, a very easy way of being able to access that information that clarifies how the governed is supposed to relate with the person engaging in the governing process. So those statistics demonstrate that there is a lot of digital activity that's already happening in our urban areas, and therefore our urban laws also need to quickly, transform and be supportive of that transformation within that particular aspect. So when you're looking at urban laws, there are two fundamental aspects of urban law that we need to look into if we want it to be an agent of transformation within the digital world. So these are the two aspects of what we call the procedural aspects of law and the substantive aspects of law. So the procedural aspects of law, which will be important towards this transformation, includes what the setup, the institutional setup, the ways of communication, issues about access to information, and also aspects of stakeholder engagement. So these aspects definitely have some implication when we talk about digital transformation, because institutions and how they relate with the people within an urban area or within a city, the ways of communication has a clear role within the whole conversation of digital transformation. And this is what we call the procedural aspects of urban laws. So when we look at urban laws, we are asking ourselves some key questions. I'm asking, does the institutional framework that have been put in place, does the communication arrangements that are there, does the access for information that we have, is it supportive of a digital frame? So we have looked at statistics there in a few moments ago, and we have seen that over 90% of most urban dwellers in our African cities have access to some digital aspects of sorts. So have our institutions evolved? Have our ways of communication evolved in a way that we are able to get this information quickly and easily at the tap of a button, as somebody would say? Or are we still having institutions that are still stuck, to the old ways of communication, of management, to the extent that then it makes access to information and decision making quite difficult? The second aspect of urban law that is important in this whole conversation of digital transformation is what we call the substantive aspects of law. And the substantive aspects of law are what, in most cases in urban language or urban slang, they would call the situation on the ground. So substantive aspects of law are those specific instruments that the urban laws provide in specific decision making, for example, in aspects of land use. So you will find aspects of urban law that talk about environmental management, for example. What is allowed within a particular area? What can you develop? What can you not develop? What is prohibited? What is allowed? So those are what we call the substantive aspects of urban laws. And those also have a role to play in all this conversation of digital transformation. We shall be seeing, for example, when we're talking about those examples, we'll see how then these two aspects of law play an important aspect in the digital transformation. Now, so what are some of the categories of urban laws for digital transformation? What are some of these categories of laws that are important that we need to look into as we are trying to digitize and digitalize our urban management aspects? One is the Constitution. The Constitution always is an important aspect of urban law. We have land laws, we have planning laws, we have environmental laws, infrastructure laws, and most importantly, we also have public participation laws. Public participation laws is an important aspect of this digital transformation because, as we shall be seeing, public participation is a very key ingredient for sustainability of urban areas and our cities.